Hello and welcome to episode 138. How did we get so dark? And I don't know
Good
how.
question.
Yes, a good question. My name is Dr. KK, and I'm the innovation officer at Trinka and Inago. And I have with me Tony, who would probably never get so dark.
I'm darker than you would imagine. Hello, everyone. Tony O'Rourke here from Inago. Welcome to PubShorts. This episode is named after a song by Royal Blood called How Did We Get So Dark?" The song's uneasy self-interrogation fits a week about credit,
Mhm.
metadata, orchid, and the slow change of the slow ruin. I'm not going to use the word my colleague has suggested. Of academic publishing, asking how systems meant to recognize work ended up obscuring it.
Well, you know why that is there? That's because that's of an article. The word that you skipped, we will have to cover because it's part of the title of an article. But
Go
anyway.
good. Well, I refuse to use it until that point.
All right. So let's get on with the story. So for the first one, we have a PLOS One open access peer reviewed article titled "Attribution of Credit in Acknowledgements: The Case of Systematic Reviews in Medicine." So it is related to. It's looked at the Cochrane, I guess, systematic reviews. The authors,
Cochrane.
yeah, Cochrane. The authors found that a significant portion of eligible reviews failed to acknowledge previous authors, and this oversight was more common for non-white contributors driven by geographical disparities rather than intentional exclusion. And this study, Tony, highlights that while authorship is heavily research, acknowledgements have been largely overlooked despite their importance for research, transparency, and fair credit. I think this is pretty much it. These are the main points for it. What do you think? I mean, we've talked about metadata. We talked about the credit taxonomy itself in terms of attributing authorship. Eventually, this all amounts up to research integrity and authorship integrity. So I thought this was a sort of an enlightening article in the sense that we get to know how things are, but still need to fix things.
Yeah, it's still an imperfect ecosystem. There are still inequities in so many different areas, particularly around access. A lot of this may be just down to traditions and established ways of working and lack of formal training and education in terms of good practice when it comes to research communication. So I don't think it's intentional. I think as soon as you tell the author, tell the researcher, this is what's required, the author will make those sorts of changes.
Mm-hmm.
But, there is a difference between, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the kind of systems and processes that are in place and things that researchers got used to in richer Western economies than in some other markets,
Mm-hmm.
in other parts of the world. And I'd like to see it change. It is changing, but it's changing too slowly.
Yes. And one of the things related to how things should change in terms of authorship is a persistent identifier called as ORCID. And
Yeah.
ORCID has a new, I guess, a press release titled ORCID 2030 Advancing the Future of Research. And this is basically a plan which outlines 5 key themes to guide their work over the next 4 years. The goal is to evolve from establishing trust to actively empowering global research. I think it's a very, very good thing. So, what are the themes, right? So, empowering researchers is one theme, connecting research information is one thing. So, what does that mean? ORCID aims to be a central hub for reliable data, improving data accuracy, and optimizing integrations to serve as a key source of verifiable in identity and contribution data. Then there is broadening our community point, which basically stands for what it looks like, and then the advancing trust and integrity point, which I thought was interesting. This is to address challenges in research integrity by disseminating trust markers and exploring digital identity opportunities beyond ORCID itself. And finally, strengthening ORCID's resiliency in terms of, I guess, being hacked and everything. So, this is a long term sustainability point through financial growth, operational efficiency, and cybersecurity, and the use and application of artificial intelligence. So, very interesting. And ORCID apparently also uses the SOAR methodology, which stands for strengths, opportunities, and aspirations and results. So, I thought, as in on the back of the previous article where we are talking about authorship and credit, I think this is probably one sort of thing. ORCID being more robust and widening its sort of impact would be a great thing for the research community.
Oh, absolutely. And at every point, one of the things, and one of the biggest challenges that publishers have
Mm-hmm.
um, in terms of managing their research integrity processes is ensuring author disambiguity.
Hmm.
So there's if an author says who he or she is, they are who he or she is. The reality is, unfortunately, the process is being gamified, and you see authors who will create 2, 3, 4 different Orchid accounts just so that they can avoid maybe any issues that might be associated with a previous Orchid account.
Right.
That has to go. That has to disappear. There has to be complete trust. And I think, frankly, I mean, there've been lots of exercises and lots of work groups, and they've been put together in the world over the last 5 years
Hmm.
to talk about how to do this. But in my mind, Orchid should be the cross-ref of author identity.
Right.
It should be the trusted place, and it largely is.
Hmm.
And this, I think, their 2030 plan will help reinforce, I think, that position in my mind.
Right. Well, great sort of insight, Tony. Thank you. And I'm moving on to the next article, which is the one, I think this was a controversial one, Tony. So are you ready to read it out? I'll read it out for you. So this is from The Conversation. This was this featured article in Journalology 135 by James Butcher. And his the title also suggests something similar. So I'm going to read it out. The 5 stages of shitification of academic publishing. I think it's a playful take. I do not know why, Tony, you hesitated to sort of read this out aloud. But I'm gonna go to my notes, the main notes that I have. So this basically talks about academic publishing, Tony, undergoing shitification, a decline in quality and integrity mirroring social media and online marketplaces driven by commodification and profit motives. So do you understand this basic framework and why
No,
this? Yeah.
I understand. I just
Yes.
didn't like the word.
So this process, detailed in 5 stages, involves research shifting from intellectual merit to marketability. Very, very pertinent. A rise in both legitimate and predatory pay-to-publish journals, compromised peer review, and an overwhelming volume of publication that distorts the purpose of advancing knowledge. Which all of this leads to a system where quality is judged by publication venue rather than intrinsic worth, which is something that we are trying to solve by peer review, and
Yeah.
reclaiming academic publishing as a public good, and which all of this requires a return for to non-profit models and sustainable open access systems. That's a lot. That's a lot to take into account. So I'll pause here. And do you have any thoughts on what I just described as a summary?
What this does, and I think very well, is it supports the argument for pure open access. The model where, in a utopian world, all content is free to all users at all points in time, regardless of where it comes from, where it's located. It's free for all. We don't live in a utopian world. The reality is there are commercial drivers. There are costs that have to be sustained. There are shareholders that have to be sustained as rewarded as well. And because we're in that world, there have to be costs. And because of the costs, there's going to be income, there's going to be revenue that's going to be generated. And as you see, the market for APCs has gone up to start at 19 billion in the last
Right.
6 days in 2022. It's a big, big market. And when there's those sorts of revenues available, people are going to play it,
Right.
unfortunately. So yeah, they're absolutely right. I mean, it's there's no question that it's become much more of a commercially driven market than it ever was.
Right. Right. So this passage that I've highlighted, it pretty much sums up the 5 stages of this process. And what I think the reason why I brought it up, Tony, we've talked about publish or perish as one of the reasons, or probably the most foundational reason as to why there is, let's say, a poorer quality of output, research output in terms of that is coming into the submission systems, and also increased volumes, which eventually demand better systems. And publishers are also trying to find better systems to screen and validate the quality of research before they get published. So this entire process, for a perspective, is what this article is about. I just think that it's a good way to sort of look at how things are, and even though I think, Tony, you do disagree with the term used, but at the same
No,
time,
I understand the term that's used. I'm just wondering if there was a better word.
yeah.
The erosion. You know,
All right, all right, all right. From a potentially controversial, I guess, word, we move on to something related, but it's from a not like credible source, Silverchair, and this is something, Tony, you forwarded to
yeah,
me as something that we should include. So this is their report on 2026 publishing trends. So I do not have. I've already sort of gone through it. I unfortunately do not have a PDF copy open, but I'll read out my notes, and Tony, you can share your thoughts. The main vibe is basically that the AI as a tool, that has shifted from AI is the as the environment. And the Laura Simis, the director of marketing at Hum, points out that the industry is finally maturing and we are moving past random experiments and actually rebuilding workflows from the ground up. And Samantha Green from Silverchair notes that the conversation is getting existential, questioning what it even means to discover and validate knowledge when AI is a middleman. So, some of the other points include that the data is still the king of trends because it is fuel for everything else. And if your metadata isn't AI ready, you're basically invisible. And that's something that I think, Tony, you and I have talked about, and I'm very passionate about, in the fact that if you do not have high quality metadata, which is basically an infrastructural demand, we
yeah,
won't have good systems anyway. And
yeah,
there is a real authentication crisis, as per the report, brewing, and the publishers are trying to position themselves as the last line of defense for trusted
yeah,
information. Right?
yeah.
And in terms
Well,
of
that's always been the case, and that's kind of where publishers stand. They're kind of real. They're fighting corner is that they're the first and last place
right,
for trusted information. Anything else is kind of is good, it's accessible, but if you want to trust the DOI, if you want to trust a reference, it's the publisher's source that you have to rely on.
right. Right, and Tony, I've at several times in the past in PubShorts, I've asked you to look at the crystal ball and to your left and on the desk, and you said something similar to what the Hum report also says. The big play for 2026 is licensing content to AI models for
Yeah,
grounding and creating machine-readable
yeah,
access tiers for automated bots. And
yeah,
finally, a couple of other points. So the scholarly publishing industry is moving into an answer economy. I think the world is moving into an answer economy where researchers care less about journal and more the journal that they get the answer from, more about getting the direct synthesized answer through a layer
yeah,
of AI. And the
yeah,
sheer volume of AI assisted submissions and the bot traffic is putting existential strain on the technical infrastructure of publishing systems. And there are many individuals. I've quoted a couple of people's names in the first couple of points, but almost everyone agrees that we cannot go at it alone, and strategic partnerships with tech experts are a requirement to survive this disruption caused by AI. So I think this is a wonderful read, and thank you once again, Tony, for pointing me to this. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, my only comment is you're as a dear viewer of this podcast, you're probably wondering why we're picking on Silverchair. I mean, there are lots of organizations that produce these kind of forecasts and crystal ball type trends, but Silverchair, um, without wanting to overplay who they are probably one of the most important vendors or suppliers of technology in the academic publishing marketplace. For example, they have got one of the most widely used journal platforms. Sorry, by the way, this isn't an ad for Silverchair. This is just fact. They've got one of the most widely used journal platforms, but perhaps more importantly, they are the suppliers and owners of the Scholar One manuscript management system.
Right.
If you're an author and you're submitting a paper to a research journal, the likelihood is you're going to be using one of two platforms, and one of those two platforms is going to be Scholar One.
Mm-hmm.
It is so widely used. All of the world's largest publishers are using Scholar One, well, at least most, not all, but most of them are using Scholar One. So you're going to be so when they come up with these sorts of technologies, what they're effectively doing is giving you an insight, I think, into how they view their technology shaping up over the coming years as well. And they've made some really interesting acquisitions in recent years, like Hum, for example.
Right.
I think which really sort of position themselves in a very, very interesting place. So no, I have a great deal of faith in this report. I think it's very insightful and something that everyone should read.
Yeah, I do not think that Hum has been as in acquired by Silverchair. I think they're
Isn't
partnering.
it? Is it not an acquisition? Maybe I know there's a very close
Yeah,
strategic partnership, but it's not an acquisition. Or
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
I stand
Right.
corrected. Yeah.
I think Hum and Silverchair are partnering in terms of editorial in screening checks and everything, as far as I
Okay.
remember.
Okay.
Anyway, so hi, shout out to the good people at Hum, and I'm moving on to the next story. This is I guess it is a global perspective story, the best way to say it. It's a Springer Nature story, an article, University Journals in the Global Academic Publishing Landscape, mapping over 19,000 diverse titles based on Ulrich's Web data. So
Yeah.
I was not familiar with Ulrich's Web. Were you?
Ulrichs, yeah, oh yes, I know Ulrichs.
Okay.
Ulrichs, I mean, listen, when I had hair back in the early 1990s, one of the very first CD-ROM databases that came out
I see.
was Ulrich's Journal of Serials. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And basically, what it was a CD-ROM that allowed libraries to be able to um, get metadata
Mhm.
on serials, on journals.
Right.
You know, it was the one place you could get. It was the most definitive list of serial content.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been aware of this. I mean, and one of the first things that a library would buy
Right.
would be the Ulrichs database because they needed it for part of their cataloging.
Right. Before I start, going through my points, Tony. I mean, we talk a lot about fact checking, and you've mentioned quite a lot that you've had hair, and we need to fact check that. So in the future episode, somebody might write because the listeners have been asking, Tony, is this true? Tony have hair? So
If the listeners have been asking that question, those listeners need to have other things to look to do. Really, there's far more interesting things in the world than my hair.
right. Okay, so more serious stuff. So covering some points from the article, it crossed. I mean, the study was to cross reference the Ulrich's Web data with Scopus Web of Science, DOAJ, and OpenAlex, and the study found that OpenAlex indexes nearly 3/4 of these journals, and the directory of open access journals, that is DOAJ, nearly half, and Scopus and Web of Science much less. So highlighting significant coverage gaps. So university journals are heavily concentrated in countries like the US, Indonesia, and Brazil, which looks strange, as in why US as well as let's say the let's say global South, and show strong linguistic diversity with over a third publishing exclusively in non-English journals, which is language, which I did not realize. The social sciences and humanities dominate the subject profile of these journals, and many university journals, Tony, are non-profit and operate on a limited resource, budget, and often focus on supporting regional scholarship and democratizing
Yeah.
knowledge production. So the growth of new university journals accelerated significantly after 2000 with a peak in the mid 2010s, but has declined since 2020. So I want to ask you, because you've been around the block and because you've had hair, why do you think this is happening?
Well, the barriers for entry for any organization to produce a new journal really, I won't say disappeared, but certainly became a lot lower with the arrival of the electronic journal. When did the electronic journal arrive? The electronic journal arrived in the mid 90s, and it became sort of pretty widely used from
Right.
sort of the noughties onwards. So you didn't have those print infrastructure costs. You didn't have those huge distribution costs that they're associated. It was an art in itself to disseminate a print journal.
Right.
So I believe that one of the reasons why it has become so much easier is because it is just easier to be able to create an electronic journal, put it online. Then instead of having dissemination costs, what you have instead of marketing costs, and if you're not investing in marketing, then the journal's not being seen. Then why bother? But that's kind of why. It's just the barriers to entry have disappeared. But what it also means, and I haven't got the numbers in front of me, is that it's so easy. There is perhaps a certain lack of quality control in terms of which journals are permitted or perhaps a bit are coming onto the marketplace.
Right. All right, moving on to Tony, the last main story that we have. It's
by the way, before we do, can I just go back? The article makes a comment about the lack of coverage in things like Scopus and Web of Science.
Yeah.
Well, Web of Science for many years made a big play about the fact it wasn't indexing every single journal.
Mm-hmm.
What it was doing was indexing those journals, which I suppose, to paraphrase, it thought were important. Those the journals that are being cited. So there might be 30,000 journals, but at one point they were only referencing 8,000 or 10,000. And Scopus were doing a lot more than that, but it still wasn't everything. So there was a reason why it was as low as it was.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge cost involved in indexing these journals.
Right. Agreed. But there are still discrepancies. And
there are still discrepancies. Yeah. And those discrepancies widen every day as new journals come onto the market.
Right. All right, Tony. The final main article, and I think it's Yuval Professor Yuval Noah Harari might have a plagiarism concern with Todd Carpenter's title here. This is Hot Takes on the First Quarter of 21st Century Scholarly Publishing by Todd A. Carpenter. And so he, what are the salient points? So he notes that digital processes have sped up content distribution significantly, dropping publication times from months to years to weeks through
Yeah,
further gains, though further gains are marginal.
yeah,
And while initial versions include richer media, the adoption of supplemental materials such as datasets and datasets, video and code sharing has been slower than expected, which I also agree, and we need to correct that. Technology adoption is also slow, taking years for broader applications due to business priorities, user inertia, and technical depth. I think we have talked about this. I think the scholarly publishing infrastructure is sort of late to catch up with all the artificial intelligence, let's say, developments that have hit the rest of the public market. That's what I felt. Then scholarly authorship motivations are hard to shift with assessment, promotion, and tenure practices deeply ingrained in academia, which we are aware of. The open access movement, Tony, has been a major success, which I would also agree, transforming publishing by making content freely available, though issues in terms of equity and sustainability remain. And I think there are a couple of comments about the Creative Commons licenses, which were intended to facilitate sharing, are now facing challenges with AI developers using CC license content for training, which is not quite permissible, at least as per the original CC licensing system. And then discovery services have also been transformed with Google and Google Scholar replacing many traditional tools. So we remember that we are talking about the first quarter, 25 years. So that's
yeah,
why
yeah,
Google Scholar is the thing.
yeah.
And as a sort of his own crystal ball, borrowed from Tony O'Rourke, Carpenter Todd predicts researchers will continue to value reputation and impact. AI will enhance access. Policy changes will disrupt the ecosystem, and research graphs need completion, and machines won't replace humans in research vetting. So that's a lot of points, but then again, Todd is a writer, is a very excellent writer, and is covering 25 years. So what do you think, Todd's article? What are your points? Because you also have a crystal ball.
Uh, uh, Crystal ball aside, Todd, everything Todd says makes absolute sense here. You know, he's summarised the what's happened in the last 25 years brilliantly. I think maybe the only thing I would take issue with, I know you and I disagree on this, is the rate of change is so slow in academic publishing. Well, look, let's step back a second. The academic publishing sector, the academic journals have existed for over 350 years, right? Um, there's been more change in the last 10 years
Right.
than in the previous 315, 340 years put together. You know, the reason why these journals are so long term and so sustainable is because they're not resistant to change, but they're the most important thing that the journal can deliver for the researcher is integrity. The fact it's trust. It's a foundation, you know, and that has to be protected at all costs. And if there's any technology or any processes or any policies that are being introduced that will interfere with that, publishers will resist until the point they feel very, very, very confident that it's actually going to add value. So I don't think it's slow at all. I think maybe it's slower than in certain other sectors. But then again, this is not a fly-by-night sector. This is a sector that is here for the long term and has to be protected and has to be looked after. And these sorts of changes are happening. They're not happening perhaps as fast as some techno files would like it to, but it's definitely taking place. But otherwise, I mean, Ted's written an excellent article.
Right.
Todd, sorry, not Ted.
Just to clarify, I think it's slower, and I think it needs to pick up. Is what my argument is. That's why I think we are.
Yeah, and we can agree to disagree.
Yeah. All right. So, quick hits, Tony.
Everyone's got an opinion.
Really? I wouldn't have thought that. Okay. So, quick hits time. The first one, I want to directly question. Ask a question, Tony. So, this is the news is that ACM, which stands for Association of Computing Machinery, has opened its gates. Over 600,000 computer science papers are now free to everyone. Basically, an open access sort of initiative. Any thoughts? Any quick thoughts on this, Tony?
I haven't really looked into this in any detail. I'd be interested to see how they're how this is being supported. I mean, is it the entire archive, including current content, or is it just
So the
the
free
archive?
the free content includes all ACM journals, conference proceedings, magazines, and newsletters dating back to the 1950s. It also incorporates the ACM Guide to Computing Literature, a comprehensive bibliography, and ACM is structured into basic, which is free access to all published research, and premium edition, additional tools for institutions and deeper analysis. Most users will continue to access the basic edition. So I think that's a sort of a summary, and I was interested in sort of
It's
every.
very it's a bold move. It's a bold move. I'd love to see the numbers behind this, really,
Mhm.
and how it's been supported. It's an important association, yes, and it's a membership based organisation as well. So there's clearly a lot of drivers from their members to do this. But I don't know enough about the business model to be able to understand it. But clearly, they think it's sustainable. Otherwise, why would they do it?
Right. All right. The next one from
Oh,
Crossref.
by the way, this is fantastic news for a
Yeah.
computer scientist. This is fantastic news for computer scientists.
Right. All right. Quick hit from Crossref. Crossref blog. The best way of acknowledging research funding in the metadata. Crossref grant ID. So it's obviously it makes sense. It is self-evident as to what it stands for. So this Crossref grant DOI field allows members to explicitly link research outputs for their funding sources, and this feature supports greater transparency and best practices in reporting research funding. So I think it's an excellent move, and we've talked about Crossref. Any quick thoughts on this, Tony?
No, I don't know why I thought there was already a research grant identifier
Yeah,
from Crossref. Maybe it was just no. No thoughts. But it's great. It's good news. I
yeah.
mean, again, another good way of disambiguating the research.
I think there is something like, I mean, I don't know if there was a grant or a funding thing.
Fundref, I think it was called, wasn't it?
Yeah, but within Crossref we have a specific DOI field, which is great for everybody.
Yeah, maybe Fundref wasn't a DOI. Yeah, I don't know. I need to look back.
And Tony, several episodes ago, maybe almost a year ago, we covered the fact that because of funding cuts, a major journal has had to reconsider what to do in terms of its operations. So we've got good news. This is titled "Leading Environmental Health Journal defunded by Trump administration has been saved. Yes, it has been saved. The American Chemical Society will now publish the leading the journal Environmental Health Perspectives after it ceased operations due to funding cuts from the Trump administration. The ACS plans to host EHP on its website, reopen submissions in early 2026, and waive APC's article publishing charges until the end of the year, and transitioning it eventually to a gold open access model. So this is great news. I mean, from the point, especially from the point of view of what we've been talking about, the federal government funding and it affecting the STM publishing industry. So thoughts? Any thoughts?
I don't think this is the first journal to be transferred, but it's indicative of the fact that despite sort of current policies in the US, the research community appreciates the fact that these are important journals. They have to be protected. That they have to be sustained. And I think ACS have done a great thing in stepping in and saying to NIH that, okay, we'll be happy to continue this journal on behalf of the research community. So I don't think it'll be the last one.
Right. And Tony, before I switch to the next one, I realized the sheer coincidence that there was a problematic word in the description that you refused to read out, and the last story, the last quick hit, is also a problematic word. Not problematic, but something that needs to be reconsidered. At least that's the argument. So shifting the story, retire seminal from the scientific vocabulary for as you might know. So the authors of the article suggest that the term is outdated and carries connotations that are no longer applicable to modern scientific discourse. This, I mean, it's basically for DEI, from a DEI perspective, and the sort of implicit masculinity in the entire, I guess, communication spectrum. So, what do you think of it? Would you want to do this?
No, absolutely not. The word exists. Why cancel a word just because of its meanings? It has a particular meaning. It doesn't affect the reputational view of the journal. I don't agree at all.
All right. So it is after all DEI, and this is it's the wokeness, as in well, many people will be on different. I think that there is scope for the entire like the linguistics, as in language scholars, to look at all of this and probably weed out some of these things. But
Well,
maybe not.
listen. This happens anyway. This happens anyway. Language changes. Look at some of the words we used in the 19th century and the 18th century don't exist anymore. But they still exist in the dictionary because they've been superseded by other more usable or more contemporary terms. And if the community believes or starts adopting a different term to replace seminal, then fine. But
Right.
the word exists. Why cancel the word when it performs a
Oh, sorry.
clear function? I mean, listen, I've known that word
Yeah.
all my working life, my life. I've never even thought about the connotations,
Me neither. Me neither.
the history of the word. People think too hard about these things.
Right. And interestingly enough, something that is very not controversial are the 137 episodes of PubShorts, which you can
Well,
find.
controversial to some. Those millions of viewers who haven't started watching us yet, that's controversial. We encourage you to watch more episodes.
And where can they find these episodes, Tony?
Yeah, just go to YouTube, go to the Inago channel, and look for the PubShorts playlist. And all 137 episodes in their glory will be available to you, plus this one very soon.
Yeah.
And we encourage you to press that like button, share with your colleagues, leave us some comments and ideas for future topics, and comments about the current topics. We'd love to hear from you.
Right. And we thank you for all the comments you have sent in so far. And I think I can I'm fairly certain that we have not used too many controversial words in the title. In fact, we have exclusively used song titles in our title. So at least
this article, this particular episode of PubShorts has not been enshittified.
with that, I bring us to the end of episode 138. And on behalf of Tony as well as the team that helps us create such content for you, this is Dr. KK signing off. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.
See you in the next one.